Chapter 1. As the rescue team was about to lift me into the ambulance, Alden stepped in front of them, blocking their way. Elodie's injured. She needs to go first. The nurse standing by my stretcher looked worried, her voice anxious. But this woman is 7 months pregnant. She's bleeding and her blood pressure is unstable. Her condition is much more serious. A paramedic nearby nodded in agreement. This young lady only has a few scrapes. We need to prioritize those in critical condition. Alden's expression grew cold, his voice steely. I'm a doctor. I know what I'm doing. Elodie has a heart condition, and the shock she just experienced could trigger something serious. She needs to be examined immediately. Take her to the hospital now. Without even looking back at me or the pregnant woman, Alden followed the ambulance as it sped off. The young nurse beside me sighed and gave me a sympathetic look. Stay strong. Another ambulance will be here soon. While she worked on me, she couldn't help but voice her frustration. That other woman barely had a scratch, but Dr. Barrow insisted she go first. Do you think she's his wife? I've heard rumors that Dr. Barrow is married, but no one's ever seen his wife. Judging by how protective he was, I'd say that was definitely her. The other nurse, glancing at my swollen belly, shook her head sadly and muttered, Life's so unfair, isn't it? Some women have to go through all of this alone, while others have someone fussing over every little thing. Their words, combined with the pain coursing through my body, were too much. Tears started to slide down my cheeks. The young nurse immediately stopped talking, looking embarrassed. She quickly wiped my tears. I'm sorry. Are you in a lot of pain? Don't worry. We're going to take care of you. Just hang in there. By the time they finally got me to the hospital, more than an hour had passed. My condition had worsened and things were becoming critical. They rushed me into the operating room. Miss, we need a family member to sign for your surgery. Is there anyone we can call to come quickly? I forced myself to lift my hand, though it felt impossibly heavy, and weakly whispered, I'll sign it myself. With trembling hands, I scrawled my name on the consent form, every letter feeling like it took all the strength I had left. As soon as I lowered my arm, I saw Alden in the hallway, gently supporting Elodie, who had just finished getting her minor wounds treated. He cradled her like she was made of glass, his face filled with concern. Even the nurse standing by me couldn't help but comment. Marriage really is a second chance at life, isn't it? Look at Dr. Barrow. He's always so serious at work, but when it comes to his wife, he's a different person. She barely has a scratch and he's acting like it's a critical situation. Okay, maybe his ethics are a bit questionable, commandeering an ambulance like that, but you've got to admit, if you're going to marry someone, it should be a man who puts you first. The anesthesia was starting to take effect and the sharp pain in my abdomen was fading. But my mind was still painfully clear, fully aware of everything happening around me. I could feel the cold instruments being prepared and the sterile smell of the operating room hovering around me. It was only a matter of time before the surgeon's knife would cut into me. The weight of it all, the pain, the loneliness, the betrayal, settled heavily in my chest, and all I could feel was a deep, inescapable sorrow. Suddenly, the doctor's voice broke through the haze, filled with urgency. The impact caused an amniotic fluid embolism. This is serious, and I've never performed a surgery like this before. Dr. Barrow is outside. He's the only one in this hospital who has done this procedure. I struggled to keep my eyes open just in time to see the young nurse push through the surgery room doors, stumbling into the hallway as she shouted, Dr. Barrow, the pregnant woman has an amniotic embolism. You need to get in here now. Alden's angry voice boomed through the hallway. What's with the yelling? Don't you know Elodie has a heart condition? She can't handle this kind of stress. Elodie clung to him, her eyes full of tears. Alden, I'm scared, she whimpered, pressing closer to him. My heart, it feels off. I don't feel right. Alden's expression softened instantly. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. I'll take you back to your room, he murmured. You need to rest. Don't worry, I'm here. But the nurse standing nearby was desperate. Dr. Barrow, please. The pregnant woman is in critical condition. She could lose her life at any moment. Alden's patience was wearing thin. His face darkened as he said, She's not going to lose her life in the next few minutes. I'll be right back after I get Elodie settled. Just keep everything ready. But Dr. Barrow, the patient. He cut her off, his voice sharp. If something happens to Elodie, are you ready to take the blame? Tears welled up in the nurse's eyes as she watched him walk away. She turned back to the operating room, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't stop him. Inside the OR, the lead surgeon was pacing, his forehead slick with sweat. This is ridiculous. We're talking about someone's life here. His wife is fine, but he's acting like this is some game for the rich and entitled. Call him again, the surgeon barked. He's done this procedure before, he's the only one who has. We need him. The nurse quickly dialed Alden's number as the surgeon tried his line, too, his voice tight with frustration. Dr. Barrow, this is urgent. The patient's amniotic fluid embolism is getting worse. Her vitals are dropping fast. We need you in here now. Alden's voice on the other end was clipped. I'll be there once Elodie is settled. Stop rushing me. But your wife is stable. This patient doesn't have time. The call ended abruptly. The surgeon stared at the phone in disbelief, tempted to throw it across the room. Before he could do anything rash, the OR doors swung open and a young doctor in scrubs walked in, calm and composed. I'm Dorian, he said, introducing himself with a reassuring smile. I've just come back from overseas, where I've handled several cases of amniotic fluid embolism. The surgeon blinked in surprise. Dorian, the renowned specialist. His voice wavered with a mix of relief and awe. I've heard so much about you. Dorian nodded humbly. Let's get to work. The patient doesn't have much time. He turned to me, his eyes soft with understanding. Don't worry, he said gently, his voice steady and soothing. You're in good hands now. I've never lost a patient in this situation and I don't plan to start today. There was something about the way he spoke, a quiet confidence that made me feel like everything might be okay. His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, easing the fear that had been clawing at my chest. You and your baby will be fine, he said, his voice calm and certain. And for the first time in what felt like hours, I believed him. I felt my body relax, the tension melting away, and slowly the world around me faded into darkness. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed, the sterile smell of the room filling the air. The pain was dull, but the fog in my mind was starting to lift. A nurse hurried over as soon as she saw me stir, her face lighting up. You're awake. Thank goodness you pulled through. We were so worried. She must have seen the question in my eyes because she quickly added, your baby is safe too. It's just that the little one is in the neonatal unit for now, in an incubator. The baby's too small for you to see right away. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. Knowing my baby was safe. That was all that mattered. Chapter 3. Do you want me to call someone from your family? The nurse asked gently. You really shouldn't be alone right now. I nodded, handing her my phone. She scrolled through my contacts and dialed the number saved under Honey. I heard the faint sound of a ringtone from the next room over, but it was quickly cut off. The nurse frowned and tried again. This time the call was rejected outright. A moment later, his phone was turned off. She looked at me with concern, her voice soft. Let me try someone else. I shook my head. No, don't bother. Just help me arrange for a caregiver. Of course, I'll make sure you get the best one, she said, trying to be reassuring. But then I heard something from the next room, something that made my heart freeze. Alden's voice was full of tenderness. Elodie, why didn't you move to the VIP suite? I pulled a lot of strings to get you that room. It wasn't easy, you know. You shouldn't be staying in a standard room. It worries me. Elodie's voice came next, sweet and soft. I don't want to waste your money, Alden. You work so hard. I feel better staying here. Alden's tone turned firm, almost possessive. I make money so I can spend it on you. Staying in a place like this won't help your recovery. What if you end up with a scar? I'd hate to see that. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, the dull ache in my body turned sharp. The anesthesia was wearing off, but it wasn't just the physical pain that hurt. It was the realization of how wrong I'd been. Alden grew up in an orphanage. He was always so careful with money, so frugal. When we got together, I adjusted my life to match his. No more luxury goods, no more splurging. I thought we were building something meaningful, something simple but real. But now I could see the truth. Behind my back, he had been spending my money on her. The years I spent saving, sacrificing, going without, it had all been for nothing. He had used me. The thought made me sick, the betrayal cutting deeper than any wound. The nurse must have noticed the look on my face because she gave me a sympathetic glance. "That's Dr. Barrow's wife next door," she said quietly, her voice full of pity. "She barely scratched her leg, but he's been hovering over her like it's a life-threatening injury. I guess some women just marry well." She hesitated and then added, "But honestly, she seems a little dramatic, don't you think? The way she acts, it's almost like she's putting on a show." I didn't know if it was the emotional pain or the physical pain, but the tears started falling and I couldn't stop them. "Oh no, please don't cry." The nurse panicked, quickly grabbing a tissue to dab at my face. "He's not worth it. Look, if your husband isn't treating you right, you can always leave him. It's not the end if she was right. Why was I crying over a man who had already thrown me away? Something's rotten, you toss it out." At that moment something clicked. I wasn't going to live like this anymore. Why had I been saving money, sacrificing for someone who didn't care about me? Why had I been holding myself back? I took a deep breath and looked at the nurse. "You know what? Upgrade me to the VIP suite. And make sure my caregiver is the best one you can find. Oh, and I want a top-tier nutritionist too." The nurse blinked, surprised, and then smiled brightly. "Absolutely, Mississippi. I didn't realize you were a high roller." Chapter 4. There's really nothing like the feeling of spending money. I'd moved into the VIP suite. I came in quietly and I'll leave quietly, I thought to myself. Alden had no idea his wife was just one room over from his beloved Elodie. As I settled in, I started to remember what it was like to live comfortably. Really comfortably. The kind of life where you don't think twice about spending money. Everything here was top of the line, the kind of luxury I hadn't indulged in for a while. The room was fully equipped with the best of everything. Every day, a caregiver came to help me wash, and a nutritionist prepared perfectly balanced meals. There was even a postpartum recovery specialist who gave me massages to help my body heal. I was enjoying one of those massages when someone knocked on the door. The young nurse from earlier stepped in, looking uncomfortable. "Miss, I'm really sorry, but it looks like we need you to vacate this room." I frowned. "What do you mean? I'm settled in. Isn't it first come, first served?" She shifted nervously. "It's Dr. Barrow. He wants to move his wife into the VIP suite, and well, he's a shareholder of the hospital." "I'm really sorry." She glanced at the door behind her. "Mrs. Barrow is already outside. I know this is awkward, but..." "Mrs. Barrow? What Mrs. Barrow?" "Tell her I'm not moving," I said coolly. "If she wants a room, she can find another one." But as soon as the words left my mouth, she was wheeled into the room. "Elodie." All smiles and fake apology. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice sweet and dripping with innocence. "My husband just worries about me too much. He won't let me stay anywhere but the VIP suite." She gave a little shrug, her eyes flashing with something that looked a lot like triumph. "I hate to trouble you, but could you move?" I stared at her, my face expressionless. "You're going to have to find another room." "I'm not going anywhere." Her smile didn't waver, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. "Listen, I'm just trying to help you out here. You don't want to cling to something that isn't yours. When Alden gets here and moves you out, it'll just be embarrassing." She sighed dramatically. "Why don't you save yourself the trouble and head back to a regular room? This place isn't really meant for people like you." I couldn't help it. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. "Since when did mistresses get so bold?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Does it make you proud when people call you Mrs. Barrow?" I took a step closer, my gaze locking onto hers. "Tell me, have you two even gotten married? Is your name on Alden's marriage certificate?" The medical staff who had followed her into the room exchanged awkward glances, clearly unsure of what to do but too curious to leave. Ignoring the sharp pain in my abdomen, I pushed myself up, leaning on the nurse's aid for support. Slowly, I walked over to where Elodie sat in her wheelchair. I bent down slightly, grabbed her chin between my fingers and forced her to look at me. "You're nothing more than his little plaything," I said, my voice low and cutting. "And yet here you are, acting like you own the place. Where did you get the nerve?" My hand shot up, ready to slap her across the face, but before I could, I was shoved hard. The force knocked me off balance and I collapsed to the floor, pain shooting through my body. I felt the sharp sting of my wound reopening. Blood soaked through my clothes and the nurse's aide rushed to help me up, her face pale with panic. The nurse by the door bolted out, shouting for a doctor. As I lay there, gasping for breath, I looked up. Alden had rushed into the room. He was cradling Elodie in his arms, his voice full of concern. "Elodie, are you okay? Did she hurt you?" Meanwhile, I was lying on the floor, bleeding, and he didn't even spare me a glance. The nurse's aide knelt beside me, her hands shaking as she tried to help. "Miss, let me get you back to bed. The doctor's coming. I can't imagine how much pain you're in right now." I could barely keep my eyes open, the pain threatening to drag me under. Blood dripped steadily onto the floor beneath me, staining it a deep red. I felt like I was slipping away, but I couldn't tear my eyes off Alden. He was crouched down next to Elodie, whispering to her, soothing her, just like he used to do with me. I remembered the time I had a fever and had to go to the hospital for N4. The nurse couldn't find a vein and kept poking me with the needle until I cried from the pain. Alden had walked in, his face full of worry. He'd taken the needle out himself and then berated the nurse so harshly that she'd started crying. He'd even filed a complaint, and the poor girl had been reprimanded. Now looking at him, it was almost laughable. I gritted my teeth despite the pain and pushed myself up with the nurse's help. Slowly, I made my way toward Alden, who was still fussing over Elodie like I didn't even exist. "Are you all just standing around?" I hissed at the medical staff. "I'm a shareholder in this hospital. So why is no one getting her out of my room?" I glared at them, my voice cold. What a bunch of nobodies. Chapter 5. He spun around, eyes wide as if he'd just been hit by a freight train. And then, without a second thought, he shoved Elodie, the woman he'd been cradling just moments ago, hard enough that she stumbled and slammed into the wall. Blood immediately trickled down her forehead from the impact. Alden stood there, frozen, staring at me, his face a mask of shock. I must have looked like a wreck. My hospital gown stained with blood from my torn incision, my face alarmingly pale. I probably looked like a ghost. Who would have thought that I, from the richest family in South City, would be humiliated like this, exposed in front of my husband and his mistress? I'd hidden my wealth and let him bask in the glow of his so-called success, all while he thrived. And now here I was, bleeding out while he played the hero. His voice trembled as he finally spoke. "Mira, your stomach. The baby, what happened?" I looked him, my lip curling bitterly. "Do you even know who I am?" Alden flinched, fumbling for words. "Honey, please let me explain." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The staff and onlookers held their breath, eyes wide, soaking in the unfolding drama. "Elodie's not your wife?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You seemed so proud of your honey just moments ago. The way you look at her, it's enough to make anyone jealous." He swallowed, struggling to find his voice. "Mira, please let me explain." Explain what?" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "How, at the accident scene, you forced the paramedics to take her, who had nothing more than a scratch, while you left your 7 months pregnant wife behind?" I felt the heat rise in my chest. I was already bleeding. "Alden, you didn't even look at me. You didn't even ask if I was okay. All you cared about was her. You even told them she was your wife. Impressive, really." He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't done. "And when we got to the hospital, I was diagnosed with amniotic fluid embolism. You were the only doctor with the experience to handle it. But where were you? You were too busy fussing over her. You don't deserve to call yourself a doctor." I locked eyes with him, my voice cold and unrelenting. "When I was fighting for my life, I was the one who had to sign the consent forms. Me. Where were you then? And you dare to call yourself my husband? What kind of husband leaves his wife in such a critical state?" Alden's face had gone pale, his hands shaking. "Mira, please. I didn't know." The nurse by my side gently touched my arm, urging me to stay calm. I gave her a weak nod, wincing as the pain shot through my body. With her help, I lay back on the bed, trying to breathe through the agony. Alden dropped to his knees beside the bed, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Mira. No, I didn't." I stared at him, the bitter taste of betrayal heavy on my tongue. "You didn't know? But you knew enough to take away my chance at survival for her." I couldn't stop myself. The words spilled out, cold and sharp. "You knew enough to come in here and try to steal my VIP room for her. And now you want me to believe you didn't know?" I shook my head, disgusted. "No, Alden, you didn't know because the only thing you ever see is her. I've been invisible to you for a long time. And now you're playing the part of the big shot CEO, throwing around my money like it's yours. Tell me, what kind of shareholder are you exactly?" His head dropped, his voice small and broken. You're the shareholder, honey. I know. I'm sorry. Please just forgive me. I let out a humorless laugh. For years I gave up my life, my luxury, just to protect your fragile ego. I rode the subway and the bus and lived frugally, all because of you. But you took my money and spent it on her, on your mistress. And now you want to talk about the baby? I spat. The baby is gone, Alden. Gone. Because of you. You're responsible. The color drained from his face. He stared at me, horror in his eyes. No, the baby. Mira, I'm so sorry. Tears spilled down his cheeks, his whole body trembling. He dropped his head, fists pounding against the cold floor. Over and over he whispered apologies, but his words didn't matter anymore. I felt nothing. You deserve this, I whispered. Everything that's happening, you deserve it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's over, Alden. I want a divorce. His head snapped up, eyes red and swollen from crying. He stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. Chapter 6. Before they wheeled me back into surgery to stitch up the wound, I pulled the nurse aside and made a quiet request. Don't tell anyone the baby survived. Not yet. She looked at me, her eyes filled with understanding, and nodded. Of course. A man like him doesn't deserve to know. I'll keep your secret. The tear in my abdomen was bad. Since I'd already been given anesthesia during childbirth, they couldn't give me another dose so soon, which meant I had to endure the entire procedure fully conscious. No matter how skilled the surgeon was, it was pure agony. The half-hour surgery felt like an eternity, each minute stretching out longer than I could bear. By the end, I was shaking, drenched in sweat, every muscle in my body screaming in pain. Dr. Dorian, the same surgeon who'd helped deliver my child earlier, was the one to stitch me up. He'd heard about my situation from the nurses and, after a brief conversation, agreed to keep my secret. Just as they were finishing up, the door to the operating room burst open and Alden stormed in. The moment he saw Dorian, he grabbed him by the collar, his face twisted with fury. You call yourself a doctor? Some world-class specialist? You couldn't even save my child. What kind of doctor are you? My heart raced, terrified that Dorian might defend himself and expose the truth. But Dorian remained composed. He glanced at me, a calm reassurance in his eyes, before turning to Alden. Dr. Barrow, Dorian said, his voice steady. By the time I operated on Mira, she had already lost a significant amount of blood. Her blood pressure was dangerously low and she was barely conscious. The fact that she's alive now is nothing short of a miracle. He paused, his voice firm as steel. You should be thanking me for saving your wife's life, not blaming me for something that was out of my control. You're in no position to accuse me of anything. Alden staggered back, dumbfounded. He opened his mouth to argue, but before he could get a word out, the young nurse stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Dr. Barrow, she said sharply, you are the reason your child didn't make it. If you hadn't stopped her from getting into the ambulance at the rescue site, there wouldn't have been any delay. She was already bleeding back then and you made her wait. Her words hit like a slap across the face. It took over an hour to get her to the hospital, and when the doctors realized it was amniotic fluid embolism, where were you? Nowhere. Her eyes narrowed, her voice cold. You were too busy finding a bed for your mistress. So tell me, what right do you have to stand here and blame her, or anyone else for that matter? She stepped closer, her voice trembling with rage. Every ounce of suffering she's endured, you caused it. It was you who pushed her right after her surgery, causing her wound to reopen. She couldn't even have anesthesia for the stitching. She had to endure that pain alone while you stood here, throwing accusations at the very people who saved her life. Did you ever stop to think about your wife? Even once. I wanted to applaud the nurse. She said everything I couldn't. Alden's face turned ashen. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Stumbling toward me, his eyes filled with guilt. I didn't know, he stammered, his voice breaking. Mira, I swear I didn't mean for any of this to happen. A bitter laugh escaped me. Didn't mean to? I said, my voice cold. Alden, have you forgotten? You're the one who sent me to the old house that day. You told me to go pick up those things. I shook my head, the memories flooding back. I even called you when I got there. You didn't seem worried at all. I paused, my voice growing sharper. And when the building collapsed, not a single call from you. You didn't even bother to check if I was alive. When you finally showed up at the rescue, did you once think about me? I could see the shame building in him, but I didn't stop. Do you know where I was when you carried Elodie out of the wreckage? I was right there, Alden. Just a few steps away. His shoulders sagged, his head dropping as he finally understood the weight of his actions. The nurse, still by my side, let out a small, contemptuous huff. She didn't even bother looking at him as she wheeled me back to my room. And Alden? He just stood there, frozen in place like a statue, unable to move. Chapter 7 The nurse told me Alden didn't believe the baby was gone. He searched the hospital for the baby, but his deeds had spread and no one told him the truth. They all said the baby had died and was disposed of. He searched for 3 days before finally believing the baby was gone. But my baby was safe in the incubator. Unable to find the baby, he started begging for forgiveness outside my room, but I had hired security and he couldn't get in. While recovering in my room, I not only focused on healing but also began sorting out my assets. I discovered how much money Alden had siphoned off over the years. Not only that, but he had also used my status as a hospital shareholder to collude with pharmaceutical companies for profit. He accepted bribes from patients. The private investigator I hired also informed me that most of the money Alden had taken was spent on Elodie. I was determined to get back everything he had taken from me. One day, Alden managed to sneak into my room while the security guard was away. He looked disheveled and exhausted. He knelt by my bed. "Sumang, I'm sorry. I don't want a divorce." Thinking about the money he had taken and the mess he had made of the hospital, I suppressed my anger. I looked at him calmly. "You don't want a divorce? I'll give you a chance." His eyes lit up with hope. "Okay, as long as you agree not to divorce, I'll do anything. Then stand outside my room for 8 hours a day every day for a month. If you do that, I'll forgive you." He agreed without hesitation. His eyes were sincere. "Wife, don't worry. I'll change. I'll show you my sincerity. When we leave the hospital, I'll only be with you. I'll be good to you for the rest of my life. Trust me." I didn't respond and he seemed pleased, thinking he had convinced me not to divorce. But I knew he wouldn't be able to keep it up for a month. Even if he wanted to, Elodie wouldn't allow it. From the moment I agreed not to divorce temporarily, Alden began to recover, no longer looking despondent. Every day he would stand outside my room for 8 hours, bringing me soup and saying words of remorse, acting like a repentant man. I found it disgusting. After he left, I would pour the soup down the drain. Having experienced life and death, I would never believe his sweet words again. I used this time to gather evidence of his embezzlement and crimes. After half a month of his fake concern, only the soup remained. He had disappeared. He explained that his second uncle had passed away, and he had to return home for the funeral. He didn't want to burden me and asked me to rest in the hospital. He promised to return in a week. Chapter 8 While he was away, I went to see my baby. She was so small, and it was because of Alden's heartlessness that she had to stay in an incubator, separating us. I could only watch her from behind the glass, unable to touch her. Tears streamed down my face. Dorian appeared behind me, handing me a tissue. He spoke gently. "Don't worry. In 2 months, she'll be out of the incubator. Then you can hold her and talk to her." I wiped my tears and sincerely thanked him. "Thank you, Dr. Shen." "You're welcome." He seemed hesitant, unsure how to continue. "What's wrong?" His expression was strange. "I heard you're not planning to divorce Dr. Barrow? Do you love him that much? Even after everything he's done to you, you can still forgive him?" His question made me uncomfortable. I didn't understand why he was so concerned about my personal affairs. Seeing my silence, he looked hurt. Remembering his help, I thought he might just be a kind-hearted person. I shouldn't hide the truth from him. I will divorce him. But he has done many things and transferred my assets to support his mistress. I need to get my money back first. I won't let him off easily. He sighed in relief. "I'm glad you understand." Dorian's eyes seemed to brighten. Maybe it was my imagination, but it looked like he was trying to suppress a smile. My phone suddenly received an anonymous email. I opened it to find intimate photos of Alden and Elodie. Some were in bed, some in the bathtub. The most shocking one was of them on the sofa, Alden's eyes glazed over, Elodie's clothes half off, clearly enjoying herself. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. I knew who it was without answering. Elodie's sweet voice came through. Do you know where Alden and I are? Hearing the sound of waves in the background, I had a good guess. I closed the email and lay back comfortably. He's taken you to the Aegean Sea, expressing his love on the sunset beach, then taking you diving to see the underwater stars at night. Let me guess, he might take you shopping, but no, he won't. I've frozen his cards. He probably can't buy you luxury goods, just treat you to a nice meal and then relax in the hotel bathtub with red wine. After I finished, there was silence on the other end. How do you know? I sneered. Alden is lazy. He only knows one way to woo women. He did the same when he proposed to me. So I don't know what you're bragging about. You're proud of picking up my leftovers. Elodie was furious. You. Then she laughed coldly. You're just putting on a brave face. Your husband is under my skirt now. What are you proud of? And what are you proud of? Being a mistress is something to be proud of? Should I help you spread the word? So what if I'm a mistress? Your husband loves me now. Even when you were pregnant with his child, he chose to save me first, not caring about you. Your child died and he's still out having fun with me. You were pregnant for him, but he doesn't love you. She grew more arrogant, thinking she had broken me. I calmly replied, if he loves you, ask him to marry you. See if he agrees. Elodie was taken aback. He won't marry me because of you. If it weren't for you losing the baby, he would have divorced you. He only stays because he pities you. Don't think he loves you. He won't divorce me because he can't leave a life of luxury. Do you know what kind of man you're clinging to? What's so great about having money? Nothing much, but you're spending my money now. Elodie angrily hung up. Chapter 9 I began to set my trap, anonymously reporting Alden's collusion with pharmaceutical companies and attaching evidence. The next day Alden called me. His voice was gentle. Sumang, I'm coming back soon. How are you feeling? I'm sorry I left when you weren't well. Didn't you always want to go skiing in Switzerland? Let's go when I get back, okay? I didn't respond. After a while he hesitated. Sumang, have you not forgiven me? Did you do something? He finally realized. I feigned ignorance. What are you talking about? I'm just recovering in the hospital. What could I do? He quickly apologized. I didn't mean that. The hospital called, saying someone reported me for taking bribes from pharmaceutical companies. I spoke out of turn. I'm sorry. I pretended to be concerned. Did you take money from pharmaceutical companies? He denied it urgently. Of course not. You have to believe me. I'm being framed. You have to help me. I'll help you. Thank you, wife. But tell me, what about Elodie? Are you really not in contact with her? Of course not. I sent her away. I know I was wrong, wife. Where did you send her? Wife, why are you asking? She won't bother you anymore. Don't push this. She's pitiful, having suffered a lot. I swear she won't affect our relationship. Sumang, promise me you won't make things difficult for her, okay? I only mentioned her and he defended her so much. Okay. When Alden returned, he came straight to my room. He knelt down. Sumang, help me. Someone is framing me. I threw a stack of documents at him. You still say you're innocent? The director gave me a copy of the evidence. It clearly shows every bribe you took. The evidence is complete and you're still lying to me. You used my power to do as you pleased in the hospital. Why did you take so many bribes? Seeing the evidence, he turned pale, realizing he couldn't escape. He began to cry. I did it for our family. You come from a wealthy background and I'm just a poor boy. After we married, you left behind luxury for my sake, living a simple life with me. I'm a man, I have pride. He looked sincere, as if he had good intentions. I wanted to save money to give you, to make you proud of me. Do you know the pressure I felt every day? I made mistakes because I loved you too much. My heart turned cold. This scumbag knew I sacrificed my lifestyle for him, yet he still betrayed me. What a dog. Now he was trying to manipulate me, blaming me for everything. I pretended to be moved, looking worried for him. Where's the money? He hesitated, looking ridiculous. After a long pause, he didn't answer. I pretended to be angry, shouting, Did you give the money to that mistress? If I find out you did, I won't help you. You know you'll go to jail for this. Alden denied it. I didn't give it to her. I invested it, planning to surprise you. I don't believe you. Show me the money. Bring the money and I'll plead with the hospital for you. Maybe you can keep your job. Otherwise, you'll be ruined. Not only that, you'll go to jail. You know how much you took and how long you'll serve." His eyes darted, then he promised, "Wife, I'll get the money in 2 days. Please help me. I did it for our family." Chapter 10 I quietly arranged everything. While he sold his assets, I had the hospital pressure him, making him anxious. Then I had my people buy his assets at a low price. He had to sell at a low price. What was originally worth 35 million yuan was sold for only 10 million. But he still needed 2 million more to repay the hospital. They had almost nothing left. Elodie was easily persuaded to take out a high-interest loan. Alden brought the money to me. I put on a show, returning the 12 million yuan to the hospital. The hospital agreed to keep the matter quiet. With no money left, Alden tried even harder to please me, hoping to get money from me to repay the loan. I claimed all my money was invested in funds with no cash available. He grew anxious, spending less time with Elodie and only making excuses to her. Elodie, unaware of his true intentions, thought he was trying to abandon her. One day she stormed into my room. She screamed hysterically, "Where's Alden? Sumang, where did you hide him? Why do you cling to a man who doesn't love you? You're so pathetic. He doesn't love you, yet you won't let go." Just then Alden entered with flowers. Seeing him, Elodie went berserk, accusing him, "Alden, you heartless man. Are you planning to go back to Sumang and abandon me? You don't love Sumang. Just because she has money, you're dumping me?" Alden panicked, signaling her to leave. "Get out. Are you crazy? Leave now." I spoke up, "Alden, didn't you say you sent the mistress away? Why is she here?" Alden anxiously explained, "Wife, let me explain. I don't know how she got here. It wasn't me." I pretended to be upset. "You don't know? How did she find you? Tell me now, who do you love?" Alden's eyes struggled, then he made up his mind. "Wife, I love you. We're a family." Elodie went mad, slapping Alden. "You liar. You tricked me." Alden slapped her back, knocking her to the ground, her face swollen and tear-streaked. She laughed coldly, looking at me. "Are you happy? You won. But let me tell you, he doesn't love you. How long will you deceive yourself? When you lost your baby, he was with me in the Aegean Sea having fun. Do you know where the money he took went?" "Shut up." Alden slapped her again, threatening her. "Get out. Don't talk nonsense." Elodie spat at him. "You dog." Then she turned to me. "He spent it all on me. Bought me a villa, a car, jewelry. We've been together for over a year. You really believe he saved money for you? He took so much of your money, you fool." Alden went crazy, slapping her again. "Are you trying to ruin me?" Elodie fought back. "You want to dump me? I'll ruin you. I got nothing from you, only debt. You think you can leave? No way. Bastard. Bitch." They fought like animals. I watched amused. I almost clapped. Security finally came and separated them. Alden's face was scratched and Elodie was covered in blood, barely conscious. So much for the perfect love. When things got tough, it all fell apart. Such a love, such a relationship was disgusting. Chapter 11 After they were taken away, I filed for divorce. I also reported Alden's bribery to the Health Bureau. The investigation revealed he had prioritized wealthy patients needing organ transplants, causing a patient who was next in line to miss a liver transplant and die. Alden was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. I successfully divorced him. Dorian sold the assets he had bought from Alden at a low price, making a profit of 30 million yuan. 2 months later, my daughter was out of the incubator. Holding my soft, sweet daughter, my heart melted. But as I left the hospital with my baby, Elodie attacked me with a knife. I shielded my baby, unable to fight back, holding her tightly. The expected pain didn't come. Dorian had arrived and subdued her, but his arm was cut in the process. Security arrived and restrained Elodie. I rushed to check Dorian's wound. "Are you okay?" "It's a deep cut." I noticed old scars on his arm. I suddenly remembered something. I exclaimed, "Your little mushroom head? Why did you change your name?" He smiled warmly. "It's a long story. But why did it take you so long to recognize me?" "I recognized you right away. You were so chubby as a kid. Now you're so handsome. How could I recognize you?" We laughed together. felt like we were kids again. When he was 10, his family emigrated. I chased after the car, calling his name. He leaned out and shouted, "Su Mang, I'll come back and marry you when I grow up."